Hi guys, on this installment of PJ Cooks Sexy Food, we're going to be making that Italian classic. We're going to be making vodka sauce. Today we're going to serve it up with some nice rigatoni. So let's get started. So the ingredients we're going to need today to make our vodka sauce. We're going to start off with 2 cups of heavy cream, 3/4 of a cup of vodka, 3 tablespoons of olive oil. We have about 5 tablespoons of butter. We have 5 cups of crushed tomatoes, 1 large onion, finely diced. We have 1 thick cut piece of prosciutto. We have 1/3 of a cup of parmesan cheese, 1/4 of a cup of basil leaves, 1 teaspoon of red pepper flake, 1 teaspoon of oregano. We have 4 cloves of garlic, finely minced, and we'll use salt and pepper to taste. So the very first thing I did is I put my big stock pot on with water for our pasta. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut up my prosciutto. Now if you look at the prosciutto, you can see it's a very thick piece. It's not a thin piece. I asked my butcher to cut it thick because I want to slice this into nice strips. Just like this. Because I want little chunks of the prosciutto in my sauce. You could buy it thinly sliced if you want. I just kind of like having those little bits of chunky meat that you get to find in between. It's like a little surprise when you bite into it. So I'm going to cut it all this way. Then once I have it all cut, I'll take it, turn it around. I'm going to cut it into a little dice, just like this. Once I have all my prosciutto diced, I'll put it in a bowl and put it onto the side to use for later. The next thing I want to do is I want to take my basil leaves, just like this, and I want to stack them on top of each other, just as you see here. Just stack them into a nice little bundle. I'm going to do this in 2 little bundles because I got a lot of basil, because I really enjoy the taste of basil here. Then I'm going to take my basil leaves, I'm going to roll them up, almost like you're rolling a little cigar of basil, just like so, holding it tight, taking our knife. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to do thin ribbons of basil. The cut we're doing here is called a chiffonade. And then when you get down to the stems, just leave the stems and take them and toss them away. Now I'm going to do all our basil, and then I will be back to show you the next step. So the first thing I did is I put in my olive oil and my first 2 tablespoons of butter into my saucepan. This is about a 4-quart saucepan that I have going, and we're going to get this good and hot, get that butter melted. Okay, now that our butter is nice and melted and bubbly, I'm going to go ahead and add in our prosciutto. I'm just going to cook this for a couple of minutes just to render the fat off it. I'm on a medium heat at the moment. And we just want to get it a little bit crispy around the edges. It's not going to take long at all. Okay, so our prosciutto's been cooking for a couple of minutes. You can see how it's picked up some color. And you can see how the fat is rendered out of it. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove as much of it as I can and put it in a bowl. We're going to return this back to the sauce in just a little bit. Okay, so I removed the prosciutto from the pan. I let the oil get good and hot again. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in all of our onions. And I'm just going to sweat our onions here in all this beautiful butter and oil and fat from the prosciutto. This is a ton of flavor. You notice I'm not salting my onions right now. The reason why I don't want to add salt is the prosciutto threw off some salt. We have Parmesan cheese going in here later. I'm going to add salt just at the very end to taste because I don't want it to become too salty. So I'm going to go ahead and sweat these onions for a little bit, and we'll be back once they're ready. Okay, so our onions have been going for a few moments. You can see how they've started to soften. Now that brown that you see on the onions, that didn't come from them cooking right now. That came from them picking up all those brown bits that came off into the bottom of the pan from when we fried up that prosciutto. So that's absolutely delicious flavor that they picked up. Now I'm going to go ahead and add all my garlic. Going to add in the oregano. Going to add in the red pepper flake. And we're just going to stir that around and cook that for just a few moments, just until it really becomes fragrant. You can smell the garlic and the peppers in the air. I mean, this is one of my favorite smells. You have onions and garlic cooking. That just, you know you're in for a good meal when you get that smell in the house. Okay, so now that really smells nice and fragrant. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add our diced prosciutto back in. Stir that around with our onions. Now this time you got to be careful. I'm going to turn my burner off completely. And then I'm going to add in our vodka. You don't want to add in the vodka on a heat because then you will, if it splashes, you can get a giant flare up. And what we want to do is you just want to cook that vodka down till it reduces to about half of what the volume of the liquid. So now that it's been in there, I'm going to turn my heat back on. I'm just going to let that simmer for just a couple of minutes. It's only been about 2 minutes, and you can see how the vodka is already reduced. Remember, it is mostly alcohol, so that'll evaporate rather quickly. And you can see, though, how it got rich and creamy in the bottom of the pan. That's beautiful. Now let's go ahead and add in our heavy cream. Scrape out that cup. We don't want to leave anything behind. Beautiful. Now, we're going to stir this well, and we're going to let this cook until it reduces by half. See, our cream is boiling away nicely, starting to reduce. And you'll know when you're ready, because you'll see the color is going to turn from this nice creamy white, it's going to turn a little bit yellowish. That should just take about another minute or so. Okay, so you can see how our cream has started to darken in color. You can see how it's reduced. And when you coat the back of a spoon, just like this, you have a clear, distinct line. Our cream is reduced to just the appropriate thickness. At this point, we will go ahead and add in our tomatoes. And we'll give our tomatoes a really good stir into our cream. And we're going to let this cook for just a couple of minutes. So our sauce has just started to simmer, and I can hear my pot behind me is now come up to a boil. So I'm going to go ahead and get my pasta into that water. So our sauce is just simmering now. At this stage of the game, I'm going to go ahead, toss in all of our basil that we chiffonaded, get that stirred in. Let that go right in, because basil is always best added at the end of a dish, so that this way the oils stay fresh and it doesn't dissipate. Beautiful, beautiful. Now I'm going to turn the heat off. I'm going to stir in my Parmesan cheese. Get that nice and melted into there. Because the cheese is a cooked product, you don't want to double cook it because then it'll break and it'll cause your sauce to get an oil slick across the top. And lastly, like we didn't use enough fat and butter and cream, we're going to add in that last bit of butter right into it. And we are going to vigorously stir that butter into the sauce. The butter is not going to cause the sauce to break. It's not going to create oil on top. It's just going to add another layer of richness right into this. It's almost dissolved. I can see it there. Okay. Final thing to do. Let's give it a taste test. See if it needs any salt, if it needs any pepper, a little bit more red pepper. Perfect. I don't think it needs anything. So now you can be like, Peter, that looks like a lot of sauce for a pound of pasta. It is a lot of sauce for a pound of pasta because what I did is I made 2 batches. I'm going to take half of this, put it in a plastic container, pop it in the freezer. So I want vodka sauce again, I have it. And this will keep in the freezer for like 2 to 3 months. So it's an awesome thing to make. Okay, so I'll take my spoon away for now. Our pasta is nice and al dente. I'm going to fish out of my pasta water using my spider. I'm going to toss it right into the sauce. Fish all that pasta out. Today I used rigatoni, but if you wanted to, you could use penne. You could use any tube-shaped pasta, so because the sauce is going to go into those tubes and it's going to hold on. It's going to be absolutely delicious. I'm going to keep fishing out this pasta, and we'll be back in a second to mix it all together. Okay, so I have all our pasta into our sauce. I'm going to give it a good stir. I'm going to let the pasta sit in this sauce for just a minute or two so it can drink up all that goodness. The sauce is going to thicken as the pasta starts to absorb the sauce. You can see how it's thickening it right in front of our eyes. This time, if we wanted to add a little bit more cheese, this is the time to do it, so we could add some more cheese into it. Stir that in. That'll also thicken the sauce even more. That is absolutely perfect. We are now ready to plate.